And guys, Ben Azadi is how he says his name. He is the Ben Azadi, not to be confused with any other Ben Azadi, because we know there's millions of them out there. But he's the Ben Azadi from Keto Camp. And I've known you, Ben, now, I guess about a year or so. You've kind of really stepped up your marketing of who you are and what you're doing. You've got a great podcast I was recently a guest on, had a lot of fun with you. So I'm like, dude, turnabout's fair play. Let's get you on my show and have some fun as well.
Yeah, I had a blast with you on my show. That was great. You challenged me to ask you a question that you'd never been asked before, and you told me that I accomplished it. So I was glad about that.
Yeah, I've been on so many podcasts over the years, both behind the microphone on this end and then being a guest on other people's shows, that, yeah, it's almost impossible to stump me on a question I have not heard before. What was the question that you asked that
It was about following, let's say we have three people we really love that talk about keto. How do you choose the one that works for you?
Yeah. And that was the sizzle reel that you used for your little quote. Oh, that was good. I guess my answer was good because you made a sizzle reel out of it.
It was great. I love the answer.
Well, man, I love it that you kind of came on the scene. And what's funny is people have found my work, thankfully, from my interview with you. I'm hoping people find your work from your interview with me here today. Tell us a little bit of your story, because everybody goes into keto a lot of times for weight loss, but then they end up having other things happen for them. Was yours a weight loss story?
It wasn't pertaining to keto, a weight loss story. So my story was that I was obese for most of my life growing up here in Miami. My parents immigrated here from Iran. Mom and dad came here in the 70s, had my sister in 1980, I was born in 1984. And they did the best they can with their device, with what they had. They worked several jobs, and I was pretty much left to my own devices here in Miami Beach. So I hung out with the wrong crowd. I ate a standard American diet. I played video games all day, and my body ballooned up to the point where it transferred into my adulthood. And I found myself back in 2008 being a 24-year-old obese man at 250 pounds, addicted to video games, addicted to alcohol. At this point in my life was when my ex-girlfriend broke up with me, Jimmy, and I was depressed. And I say depressed, and I think that's even a way to put it lightly. I was suicidal. I was actually on the internet several times looking for ways to end my life, because I just remember crying every day, being in a room by myself. And if I was by myself, I would think about ways to hurt myself because I was so tired of crying every day. And anytime I went on the internet to explore ending my life, I thought about my mom. I thought about what that would do to her and the devastation she would have to endure. And it stopped me from pursuing that. So I knew at this point in my life that I had a decision to make. I knew I was not going to take my life, but I was tired of being buried in the dirt there. So this is where I started to read books. I started to read books from authors like Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor and Earl Nightingale, like these legends. I see you shaking your head. And yeah, brother, it opened up a whole new world to me. And for the first time in my life, it helped me realize and understand that I am responsible for these results. Just like you went through your transformation, I am responsible for this mentally and physically obese body that I had. And for the first time in my life, I became the victor of my future, and I stopped being the victim of my past.
Yes, dude. Like, I feel like we have been stuck in like the Twilight Zone when it comes to like diets. And everybody thinks diets are a physical change only. And I tell people, it doesn't matter what diet you do, keto, carnivore, paleo, even vegan, before you even get to that physical part of the diet, it's right here. And if you can't change what's going on right here, you're never going to make a change happen. Like, you made an incredible change. And by the way, thank God for a really great mama growing you up. Because imagine if that mom was emotionally abusive towards you, you would have killed yourself at 24.
Yeah.
He was your rock because she was your rock as your mom when you were a kid. When you were at your darkest moment in your life, there she was right there. Your memory of her kept you from doing that. So, and I'm grateful because I love you today, man, and love the work that you're doing, and you're spreading positive work now. But this mental piece, it's so missing in this conversation about health. Why is that? why don't we talk about more of the emotional impact, of the kind of mental aspect that leads people to get big and unhealthy to begin with?
You're so right. It's reasons come before results. And if you don't have a strong purpose, a strong why, if you don't have that mental component, I call it the mental six pack. If it's not strong, then it doesn't matter how much fasting you do, how much keto you do, or whatever diet that you follow. It starts on the inside before it manifests on the outside. And it's not being taught. It's not being taught in mainstream media. It's not being taught in our schools. I had to actually read books that I never discovered when I was going through school. And I started reading these books. So the information is out there. You talk about it all the time. But just real quick, going back to my story, Jimmy, the minute that I said I am responsible, and I literally said those words out loud, I am responsible, 9 months after that, I went from 250 pounds down to 170. I went from 34% body fat down to 6% body fat. So I finally carved out a physical six pack. Not that is synonymous with good health. However, being a kid that was bullied and picked on, wearing t-shirts inside of swimming pools, that was a huge deal to me. Yeah. Big, dude. But more importantly, I carved out the mental six pack. And that's what started my journey. But here's the funny thing. I didn't do keto to lose the weight. I didn't do keto to get through that transformation. I did whatever I discovered in Men's Health magazine and bodybuilder blogs, which got me results. But I was fit, but not healthy. I was one of those fit, sick people out there who had acne. I had digestive issues. So that set me on a journey, though, to start studying health. I did vegan for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then eventually in 2013, I came across this wonderful book called Keto Clarity, and I listened to it on Audible. Yeah, you heard about that book. And I remember listening to it on Audible, getting that moment of clarity, ding. And it really excited me. And yeah, there you go. That's it right there, man. Your work has changed my life. And yeah, that's what got me started in keto, was your work back in 2013.
That's so awesome. Like when I was writing that book, I was like, okay, this information's out there already. It wasn't like it was revolutionary, but translating it into lay language. And this is what you do so brilliantly now through your Keto Camp concept. I want to get into how you created that and why you created that and why you're doing all the work you're doing now. But for me, it seemed like there was this gap. There was this void in the marketplace. And it even started when I went on the Atkins diet in the mid 2000s and started trying to talk about this. There was nobody talking to lay people. It was all this beta hydroxybutyrate, C peptide, and I'm just like, okay, somebody tell me what that means, and I'll tell people. And that's what started for me, and being translatable. Because, yeah, you lose a little bit of the nuance of the science when you translate. But if you don't get people to buy in, they won't listen to anything you have to say. And it's one of the things you do so brilliantly in your work now is you make it engaging for the audience. So thank you for your compliment about Keto Clarity. But I would say you're carrying on the legacy of Keto Clarity with your work today.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm grateful to do so and honored. So thank you, brother.
So how did you come up with Keto Camp? That's kind of an interesting branding. I love it because it's memorable.
Yeah, it sure is. So my first company was called Shred Fat, and I still have that company, although it's not very active. That's the company I started when I went through my transformation back in 2008, 2009. I became a personal trainer. I was one of those trainers that was a mobile trainer traveling to clients here in Miami. My first clients were on Craigslist, where I put on an ad, most affordable Miami Beach trainer, and I would charge about $25 for a 60-minute session, and I would have these strangers knock on my door on my house, where I converted a bedroom into a gym. They paid me cash, and I trained them for an hour, and my company was called Shred Fat. And I had that company for several years until I wanted to do something bigger with it. So I was doing a seminar one day from Bob Proctor. And Bob Proctor said, and he has said this several times, but this time it actually clicked with me. He said, find somebody who has done something that you want to do and pay them to teach you how to do it. And I heard that several times, but this is the first time I was like, okay, I'm taking action with this. So I'm thinking about people in the space, thinking about people I've studied over the years. And I thought about Sean Croxton,
yes,
who, as a mutual friend of ours, he's been on your show and vice versa. And I reached out to Sean. I sent him an email. I said, "This is who I am. I'm looking to hire a coach to help me rebrand and just get this message out. I want to help more people." So he accepted my email. He responded to my email, and I hired Sean as a coach. And he said, "Shred fat's got to go, man. It's not what we
Yeah,
want here. It's just we want to focus on a niche." He asked me what I enjoy teaching, what I enjoy learning myself, and I said I really love keto. I love fasting. So we brainstormed together for a couple of months, and all of a sudden, Keto Camp spawned, and we decided to use the K as the camp, so it could be even more memorable. And that's kind of where it started a couple years ago. That manifested.
that is so cool. And yeah, I recently had Sean on here, and I've known Sean since the early days. He and I went way, way, way back. But yeah, he and I used to have these brainstorming sessions with each other. How can we like monetize this, but yet stay ethical about it? Like we were always having those kinds of conversations. He's super cool guy, guys. If you haven't checked him out, does a great podcast himself. So that's awesome. I didn't realize the Sean Croxton connection. So we have 1 degree of separation there between our relationship with each other. So
Yeah, it's super cool, man. Sean's a great guy. Definitely check him out if you haven't checked out his work. He talks a lot about mindset now, right?
yeah.
Speaking about which, all about mindset now.
Well, and he was the one that kind of put Bob Proctor specifically on my radar screen. And I actually had Bob on one of my podcasts about a decade ago now. But these mindset people, I mean, this is something I love seeing so many people, including yourself, myself, other people in this space. We're now starting to put a focus on it a little more. And I think getting people's mindset right helps it become sustainable. And of course, that word's kind of used a little bit overused in the community now. Well, we need a sustainable way to eat. And generally that's translated as keeping the weight off. But I think sustainable can have ramifications for that and ramifications for keeping your health under control, and eating in such a way that you don't really have to worry about that anymore. You just kind of put it on autopilot. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. When you start shifting away from weight loss and more on health, cellular health, inflammation, then the weight loss takes care of itself. It's just a byproduct, a side effect of actually focusing on health. And it starts with our thoughts, our 60 to 70,000 thoughts that we think every day. If we have destructive thoughts, you can't heal. Like Dr. Will Cole said something brilliantly. He said, "You cannot heal a body that you hate." And that
Yeah.
is so true.
Did you say 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day?
Yeah, according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, that's how
Oh.
many thoughts we think the average person thinks per day, dude.
And see, I'm one of those people that's a hyper thinker. I'm a content provider just like you, and I know your brain probably works on overdrive as well. If you talk behind a camera or a microphone, you have a lot of thoughts because it's like you have to, or you'll go, and just
Totally.
kind of freeze. But man, like 60 to 70,000, it's probably easily 150 to 200,000.
Yeah, you could double or triple that for you.
My gosh, like I'm because I'm always thinking of ideas, and
Yeah.
then sometimes I'm thinking of like stupid stuff. I'm like, okay, let's put that to the side, Jimmy. But yeah, I mean that's amazing. Like, and all of that starts to take its toll if you
Yeah,
don't control.
yeah, exactly. If you don't control it, if you're not aware of those thoughts, because he also estimated, Dr. Joe Dispenza, that out of those thoughts, 90% of them are the same thoughts from yesterday, which are usually regurgitating. So nobody's really creating an original thought nowadays. It's very rare. There's a great quote. I don't know who to give it credit to, but I heard it from Bob Proctor. He said, 2% of the population think, 3% of the population think they think, and 95% of the population would rather die than think. And so nobody's really creating an original thought unless they go through some sort of catastrophe, some sort of disaster, something that forces them to wake up like I did when I was rock bottom. But what if we could choose to do that now by having awareness with these thousands of thoughts that are happening every day? So when we're brushing our teeth, walking the dog, those are the thoughts that really manifest our life, because we don't get what we want in life. We get what we are. And what we are those thoughts. So it's so powerful, Jimmy.
What I love about regurgitating thoughts, it's one good thing about it. It starts to solidify things that you need to be thinking about. So if you thought about something yesterday, you think about something today, you think about the same thing tomorrow. There's 3 days in a row now where you've thought about something. And I use that as the litmus test, Ben, for, okay, that must be something I need to do something with. Either do it in a content, the form of a Jimmy Rants video, or make a podcast out of it, or put it down in a book. But some reason it stays in my subconscious that I keep thinking about it. So I don't necessarily think regurgitating is always a bad thing, but if it's a bad thought that you really can't do anything with, yes, that's the kind that needs to go to the wayside.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a habit, right? It's a new habit. So habits could be good or bad. And what you're talking about there are good habits and good thoughts. Charles T. Munger said the chains of habits are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. So we want to break the bad habits and create new ones.
I've got some weeds in my backyard that if I let them get out of control, they become a tree. So I know what you're talking about. Like when it gets to the tree, it's like, okay, see, that's why putting off weed eating it a month ago is paying dividends in the worst way now.
Perfect example. I love that analogy.
Yeah, I've got them growing. But that's a real life example, by the way. I have a weed back there, but I don't whack it down like quick. It does grow big roots, and it's like,
That's so good, dude. It's like those negative thoughts are the weeds, and if you don't take care of it real quick, it manifests to more negative thoughts. I love that.
See, we're the king of analogies here today, Ben. This is the beauty. This is why I loved interviewing other podcasters. We both are quick-witted and think on our feet and think of ideas off the top of our heads. So the podcast, like, what's that about? I mean, obviously you're very engaging as a speaker. You've got these quotes that you're just pulling out of the air. I love it too. And well, according to Bob Proctor, so it's like you're really good at that. And obviously your audience, and I'm in your audience, by the way. I love what you do when you do your Instagram lives and listen to your podcast. They love you because you're another one of the translators. And there's not enough translators out there. I think there's a lot of recipe makers. There's a lot of rah, let's go get them kind of people. But people that take the science and then make it palatable for the common folk, there's about a dozen of us, and that's being judicious, saying a dozen, that are doing that kind of thing. So what made you want to do that?
Well, you know, when my dad got sick, he had type 2 diabetes, which you're very familiar with. You've helped so many overcome that. My dad had that. Me not knowing exactly what that disease is and just kind of following the conventional approach, listened to his doctors, and every single year his health got worse to the point where back in 2013, at the end of 2013, my dad suffered a massive stroke, which left him paralyzed, and he lost the ability to speak. And he was pretty much on his deathbed in the hospital. And I remember this is the most difficult time in my life, where I would visit my dad every single week. I would play music for him and talk to him, and he couldn't even speak a word back to me. And he was in the hospital, in the hospice for 9 months. I went to go visit him now, 9 months into this whole ordeal on a Monday night in August. It was August 11, 2014 now, when I went to go visit him, and he was in the worst shape I had ever seen him in. He was convulsing, he was throwing up on himself, and it was very difficult to see my dad look like that. At the end of that night, the nurses cleaned him up, and he looked so much better. I remember walking up to my father that night, and I looked at him in the eyes, and I told him how much I loved him. I told him that I'm always going to be his son. He's always going to be my dad. I kissed him on the forehead, and I remember saying the words "Hasta la vista, baby," which from the movie Terminator, he always said to me whenever he said goodbye. And I went home that night, Jimmy, on that Monday night, and I prayed that night. I said the same prayer that I said every single night for months, which was to please just end my father's suffering. He has suffered enough. Please, I just repeated it over and over and over that night. And there was something different about me saying it that night. There was an energy, there was a feeling. I felt like God was listening to me. And I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and I got a phone call around noon the next day. And I look at my phone, and it's the hospital. And I look at the caller ID, I see it's the hospital, and my heart just sinks in my chest knowing that something's up. So I pick up the phone, and it's the nurse letting me know that my father stopped breathing, and he passed away that morning. So I sat there. I remember my dog staring at me, crying. Part of me was very relieved that my father was no longer in pain. I no longer have to see him in pain. But the other part of me was just so devastated that I lost my father. And this is what took my career, if you will, in health as a hobby to a purpose. I wanted to know what happened to my dad. I wanted to know what's happening to America. I mean, we have 60% of Americans diabetic or pre-diabetic, 1 out of 3 women getting cancer, 1 out of 2 men getting cancer. And I come to realize through really studying health that I could have saved my father's life. In fact, the same information that we talk about, Jimmy, is the same information that would have saved my father's life. But I also know that I was given that mountain so I could show the world that this mountain can be moved. So that's what lights me up every single day. My mission here at Keto Camp is to educate and to inspire 1 billion people on planet Earth, to give this information to them, to let them know that they are masterpieces because they are pieces of the master. And if you could just remove the interference and allow the body to heal, you can overcome anything. There's no pill, no surgery, nothing that could replace what we have within us, which is the innate intelligence. So that's what lights me up to get this out there on all my platforms, dude.
It's amazing your story about your father and how you've used that to motivate yourself to do what you're doing now. The same, and that was 2014 when that happened. 2008 is when my experience happened with that. My brother Kevin, who is my only full-blooded brother, 4 years older than me. I was the little snotty-nosed kid brother, and he was the older brother that I looked up to until I got into college, and then I grew taller than him, and I could block his shots in basketball at that point. So, but he had hospice called on him in 2008, early 2008, morbidly obese. He had 3 heart attacks at the age of 32. They put a pacemaker in his late 30s. And so he was 41 at that time. Type 2 diabetes, severe heart disease, heart failure, and morbid obesity. And one of the kindest people you'll ever know. And of course, this is just a couple years after I started my work. And here I am, the low carb guy, and I'm telling him about this way of eating. And he does it, sees a little bit of success, but then just goes right back to his old ways again. So when he took his last breath in October of 2008, yeah, that was devastating to me. But at that point, I said, you know what? He's my motivation for continuing on, because there's other Kevins out there. There's others of your dads out there in the world that can be saved now. And so you honor your dad through Keto Camp. I honor my brother Kevin through Living La Vida Low Carb and all the rest that I've done. And it's amazing, like those of us that have had this kind of tragic loss in our lives, how much it does motivate you to just want to help and help and help so that other people don't have to go through the same pain we did.
That's right, Jimmy. That's exactly it. It's unnecessary, that pain that we went through, that my father went through, your brother went through, because it's a lifestyle disease that was treated with medication. And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the mismatch. But once you know it, you got to share it. You got to share it from the Raptors and let the world know, which is what we're doing here. So yeah, amen to that.
And see, here's the thing, like, why don't we know? And of course, you and I both have talked pretty extensively about the failure of the dietary guidelines, which they're about to come out with a new version of those, going to be just as atrocious as they've ever been. We also know nutrition is not taught to medical professionals in med school, so they can't possibly give anything other than pharmacological and physiological type of responses to patients exhibiting the symptoms of chronic disease and obesity. Like, there's a disconnect between what patients need and what they're getting. And what they're getting is a failed system. How do we get those people in the failed system, pluck them out of that, put them into functional medicine, put them into nutritionists that actually understand nutrition on the proper scale, not dietitians. Some are good, but most of them are heavily influenced by industry, Coca-Cola, kind of supporting the Dietetics Association. We have all these like intricate little webs of fingers in the system that prevents people from actually being healthy. How do we break people out of that system?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we do our part, which we're doing in educating and getting information out there on podcasts and videos. And, them coming across a video, an interview like this could really wake them up to want to change paths, if you will. But I don't know the answer, man. Maybe you do. What is the answer? How can we change the system right from the beginning?
I mean, for me, you have to dismantle the dietary guidelines from the U.S. government, because if you have the United States Department of agriculture being in charge of telling us how to eat. What is their goal at the USDA? It's to get people to eat more grains. That's it. That's it. So why are we surprised when they promote healthy whole grains? And so I think we need independence from government entities. We need independence from funding of all these professional groups of food industry, like Coca-Cola with the dietetics industry. We need to teach nutrition, not just as an afterthought. You know, a couple days to a week worth of education is literally all they get. And so you can make that a whole year worth of education. Now you'll have to like make decisions about what they don't learn, but maybe you fast track some of the medication stuff and not put so much emphasis on it, and instead put the emphasis on nutrition. I think we get somewhere. Like, we know every chronic disease is tied back to your metabolic health, and we're seeing it on full display this year with COVID-19.
Yeah, we are. And you know, I love what you shared. I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. But here's the thing. The profits are going to take a hit. And a lot of big food companies who sponsor, like you said, I mean, I think from what I've read, about 40% of the funding for the Academy for Dietetics and Nutrition comes from these big food companies, right? It comes from Coca-Cola. You go to these events, you've probably been there, and you see nothing but General Mills products and Coca-Cola products. So they're going to take a big hit. So how do you overcome that?
I remember going to some of the obesity conferences with Dr. Westman and Dr. Bolick and Dr. Finney and all the rest. And I remember it was a traditional, like, American Society of Bariatric Physicians. I think they're called the Obesity Society now. But I would go to some of these conferences circa 2007, 8, 9, somewhere around there. And in the mornings, they would have pastries and donuts and muffins. And I'd look at Dr. Westman and I go, this is an obesity conference. Don't they know that's an obesogen food that they're serving? He's like, I know, we're working on them. And eventually they did start offering bacon and eggs and that kind of thing along with that stuff. So at least there were options. But it was just, to me, it was kind of the height of the hypocrisy of the system, that this is the bariatric society trying to get people to lose weight, and they're serving the very foods that make you, not lose weight.
It's crazy, dude. Yeah, when I remember researching this stuff, and I would go to the American Diabetes Association website just to see their dietary advice, and it's the same nutrition advice that causes the diabetes, right? So if we just look at the government guidelines, look at these entities, the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, and do the opposite, then we're down the right path, right? So when we look at cancer patients in the hospital that maybe have gone through chemo, what they're being fed in the hospital is the same food that can cause the cancer. So it's so backwards, Jimmy.
I recently had Jason Carter, he's a nurse, registered nurse in New York City, on one of my podcasts. And he said, yeah, he's carnivore. And he said, yeah, when the doctors and nurses, other nurses aren't paying attention, I whisper to the diabetics, you don't need this insulin, just cut the carbs. And he got caught one day and they kind of reprimanded him. And I'm like, here he is telling people eat real food so you can come off of medication. What world are we living in that is somehow a bad thing?
Man, that's crazy. That is absolutely so corrupt, dude. And yeah, you're right. There needs to be a whole 180 with the whole system.
Well, and see, here's the thing, like, people are going to continue down that path. My parents' age, which is 70s, early 70s, they're going to trust doctors to the hilt. I'm about to turn 49 later this year. There ain't no way I'm trusting the medical system. And it's like, we have this inherent distrust because we've been lied to. And it's almost as if, like we were talking about with the diabetes diet for the ADA, which, by the way, the ADA has changed now. Mm-hmm. They are now allowing low carb options, but it's still not like front and center that, you need to do this. But is it possible they're trying to keep us just enough sick so they stay relevant? Like, wouldn't solving diabetes put the American Diabetes Association out of business? Wouldn't solving heart disease put the American Heart Association out of business? American Cancer Society, we could go down the list. It seems to me, keep them just enough sick without killing them so we can have a cause that makes money. I mean, that's the jaded part of me saying that.
Yeah, it may be jaded, it may sound jaded, but it's the truth. It may be keeping people around longer, but they're getting sicker. So it's maybe increasing lifespan, but not health span. And it's not being classified as a suicide because it's happening so slowly. So we're not dying, we're killing ourselves. It's a slow suicide when we follow that conventional approach. But you know what? It's not all doom and gloom because the popularity with keto is, there's a double-edged sword here, but one of the benefits of it is that so many people are having these amazing transformations because of your work, because of the work out there. So they're getting these transformations, they're sharing it with their community. And the fact that keto is so popular, so many lives are being changed, and people are starting to wake up. They're starting to bring your book to the doctor and have conversations with them. So it's really a matter of us just continuously showing up, getting the content out there so they could share a piece of work with their doctor and have that intellectual conversation.
The sad part is the mainstream medical system, I think, is broken beyond repair, because this whole swoop you in 3 to 5 minutes. Hey, how you doing? Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye. And it's just this quick little visit. I haven't been to a conventional doctor in forever because the one down the road down there, I think I said this on your podcast, he refused to run insulin, refused to run HSCRP. And I'm like, I went all Donald Trump on him. You're fired. And so that was politically incorrect to say, but I don't care.
That was more of not politically a political statement. That was more of the apprentice statement. That was a TV statement.
Yeah, but everybody will pick a fight on.
Totally, I know.
I don't care anymore. Get over it if you got offended. Okay, so back to the story. The medical system, I think, as it's currently devised, is broken. I mean, and I think everybody realizes it's broken beyond repair. And of course, again, COVID-19 is burning out a lot in the medical field. That I think when we come on the other side of this pandemic, whenever it ends, whenever they declare that we're no longer in danger, I think we're going to see a radical shift away from those mainstream doctors. Because imagine the people that maybe got sick and had a few comorbidities and like, why did this happen? Well, you had this, and this. Well, haven't you been treating me for this, and this for years? Why did I succumb? Well, you didn't take enough drug. Okay, I'm going to seek another opinion. And then they find a functional medicine practitioner. They find a functional nutritional therapist. They find somebody to help get them on the straight and narrow. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've been lied to. What else have I been lied to about? And it's going to be the mainstream medical system's just going to fall apart.
Yeah, that's happening already. I believe it's happening. And the government is seeing that, so they're actually cracking down on a lot of health coaches and functional practitioners. Even for myself, look, I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed Dr. Buttar. Are you familiar with Dr. Rashid Buttar? A couple months ago. Such a fantastic interview, one of my favorite, most impactful interviews. And my lawyer said, you can't release that. You can't release this interview. He listened to it. He said, if you release that interview, they're going to come after you. And they're going to do anything they can do to shut you down, even though I'm not doing anything wrong, but they'll take me to court. They'll try to, according to my lawyer, right? So I was only able to get a group of 500 people on a Zoom call and kind of air it on them. And I couldn't release the podcast. I still have it. And it was because they're coming after influencers, coming after coaches and functional practitioners, because that's starting to happen, Jimmy.
Let's get into this because I'm dying to talk about the censorship that's happening this year. But let's be real. It didn't happen just suddenly in 2020. I remember reporting on Jimmy Rants about a year ago. It was in April, about a year and a half ago now, last year, where the algorithm in Google changed and it made it harder for anybody to find anybody in the nutritional health, kind of alternative health space. It hit me. It hit people like Joe Mercola. It hit all of us when we had certain traffic going to our sites, and then suddenly, bam. I remember Mercola, who's one of the biggest names in the world in alternative health, he dropped by 90% his traffic. That's where he was getting. Like, he had every keyword in the book that people were like typing in.
Right.
Mercola's was right there, and then it just suddenly went away. So they've been slowly chipping away. This year they've gotten more brazen, where they just flat out pull things down from YouTube, take things off. What is it? Green Med Info just recently got their whole Instagram account just abolished. And it's like, for the sin of telling people information. And so this is disturbing. I know you have a lot of thoughts about censorship as well, but this is disturbing to me just from a personal liberty and the ability to hear other thoughts and information. Like, data does not hurt anybody. It doesn't. I remember, who was I saying? Dr. Fauci or somebody. I was watching something and I thought, well, oh, no. It was Mark Zuckerberg. He was doing an interview yesterday or today where he's like, well, we have to be careful to take down any dangerous misinformation that's being put on the sites. And I'm going, okay, information is never dangerous. What you do with that information, I guess, through your processing could become dangerous, but information in and of itself is not dangerous. So all this censorship that's happening of this information, why you can't post your podcast with this expert, is just astounding to me, especially in a so-called free country.
Yeah, I've never seen it before. And, I'm from Iran. My parents are from Iran. I've never been there. But that's exactly, I mean, there it's on a different level, but that's what it is. It's this dictatorship. It's this silencing the truth if it doesn't fit your narrative and your agenda. And it's very difficult to get the information out there when they keep shutting you down, right? I have coaching calls every single week, and my mentors are telling me, what things we could say, what things we can't say, be very aware of these words. And it's such a shame because it's information that's valuable. And you're right, it's not the information that is hurting people. It's the wrong information applied the wrong way. But if we just get the information out there and just allow people to make an educated, critical thinking decision, that's a healthy society. That's the way it should be, but that's not the way they think it should be.
Well, and the thing the thing about this is when you leave out a piece of information, then you're not having a totality of being able to analyze and process any given subject. And so you hear only one side, what's going to happen? Well, last time I checked, that's called propaganda. You're being told one narrative, and we can extend this beyond just the alternative health space. We're seeing it across the board this year in the race stuff. You're not allowed to go off of one specific narrative. With the COVID-19 stuff, wear a mask and socially distance, nothing about going outside and get vitamin D from the sun, nothing about breathing fresh air, nothing about movement, because, all those things are dangerous to talk about. Like we're living in a up is down, right is left. Like you don't even know what to say or believe anymore. And the unintended consequence, or I would say intended consequence, is you're silencing people from speaking out about it.
Yeah, it's a wacky world, dude. It's a wacky world, and the elections are coming up. I don't know when this is going to air, but the elections are this year. And I interviewed Andrew Wakefield, who's the direct, Andrew, yeah, brilliant man. And he said our freedom pretty much relies on this election. And he said that if it goes one way, America will lose their freedom, and so will the rest of the world. And I asked Andrew, I said, why would the rest of the world lose their freedom? Why does everything rely on America? Why are we the last domino here? I wanted to know. And he said, well, most of these pharmaceutical companies, the biggest ones out there, are housed in the US and in China. And he said, China's already gone. Once the US goes, then it's going to be a worldwide thing where, let's say, Sweden says, we're not going to vaccinate our people. We're not going to force this to our people. Well, then Sweden will be shunned for the rest of the world. You cannot travel from Sweden. You cannot travel to Sweden. You cannot trade with Sweden. You are isolated from the world. And they will do that to those countries who don't fit this narrative. And he said it's all going to be dependent, according to Andrew, on this year's election. And what he said was that the Democrats want to force this issue, meaning they want to force the vaccination, but the Republicans want it to be choice to choose.
Well, and even what the president did a couple months back, where he made medications a lot more affordable.
Insulin, right?
Pharmaceutical companies did not like that whatsoever.
Right.
Insulin was so ungodly expensive, and I think now it's like $4 for each unit, and it used to be like 10 times that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that hurt the pockets of these pharmaceutical companies. That's a perfect example right there. Yeah, so it's a wacky world we live in, Jimmy.
Like, I mean, and not to get like real political, because everybody has their extreme positions about things. Oh, you can't talk about, and we're going to talk about a little bit, but like it seems to me the decorum amongst people now. It's this all or nothing proposition. Do you watch JP Sears and his videos?
Yeah.
So JP did this one about pick a side, and I loved his kind of approach. By the way, guys, go look up Awaken with JP on YouTube, and you'll see what we're talking about. But he just does such a brilliant job of saying, okay, you can have an extreme position on one side, you can have an extreme position on another, but most of us kind of reside here in the middle part, analyzing, thinking for ourselves. And it's just unfortunate that if you say one point of view, they peg you as one side or the other, and you're either the friend or foe based on that.
Yeah, and I get asked all the time what my political party is, and I'm just a human. I want freedom. You're so right, and I love anybody on any side, and we should all. And you talk about this a lot. The separation taking place right now is like never before. I mean, elections are always crazy, but I've never seen it like this before. The separation between the others, there's either on this side or that side. You're either pro-mask or you're not for mask, and it shouldn't be that we need to come together as humanity, as human beings, and show love and compassion to each other, because love overcomes, love wins. But all of this hate is just driving us further. When somebody disagrees with my viewpoint on masks or my political viewpoint, I don't hate the person. I respect their opinion, and I even listen to their opinion, and I see if it suits me. And why can't we think like that as a society? Well, I know why. Because we're watching the news, we're watching CNN, constant negative news, but it's all the news out there, and it's brainwashing us.
I just caught the constant.
You got that?
Good. We got to come up with one for Fox so that they don't yell at us. So
yeah, it's all of them. I'm not singling one of them out, but it's all of them. I just thought of a clever one for CNN. That's it.
Forgiveness over xenophobia. See, I didn't do one for. Sorry.
We'll let it marinate. We'll see if we come up. If your audience thinks about something good, let us know.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, it's such a weird year, and I feel so bad for those areas where like the riots are taking place, and it seems like society's just kind of gotten out of control. And I argue that a lot of the COVID stuff, where they locked us down and hiding our face and all the things, has made people mentally go a little off the deep end. Like, see, here's the thing that people weren't thinking about even before all the measures with COVID-19 got put in there. Sorry, somebody was trying to call me. Before those things went into place, they weren't thinking that a lot of people were teetering on mental health kind of being out of control anyway. Then you add this stressor with COVID-19 and all the things that have gone abnormal. We lost sports for a while, which was the escape for a lot of people's stress. Then all the racial tensions happened after George Floyd, and all the everything else that's happened now for months on end. It's still happening, still cities on fire. That stuff takes a toll mentally, and people are losing their minds. I recently had another guest on, Dr. Paul Ralston, and we did an interview just like we're doing right now, Ben. And on there, we were talking about this mental health thing. And as soon as we got off the call, he gets a call from the hospital. One of his massage therapists had been lit on fire. She was literally just walking her dogs, and this guy walks up to her, pours gasoline on her, and lights her on fire.
Oh my God.
Breaking, like mental health. I am so concerned for those people that are literally losing their minds right now. And I don't know, the mental health industry, they better be ready. They're probably overloaded already, but they better be ready for the next pandemic is a mental health crisis.
Yeah, it's so sad, Jimmy. Man, that's crazy. I believe I've said this on previous podcasts that me going through my mental stuff with my suicidal thoughts, pursuing suicide, if I was going through that right now, it would have taken me over the edge, because my escapes, like you mentioned, my sports and my hanging out with friends would be gone. So I'd be doing nothing but thinking about killing myself every single day if I was going through this quarantine during my depression and suicidal days. So that's happening to so many people, and not a lot of people are talking about that. They're not talking about the suicides, the abuse in the households, because kids are now spending more time with their parents who were already abusive, but now their parents maybe lost a job, they're going through financial struggles, they're hitting their kids because of it. Who's talking about this? No, it's put a mask on, save the world, no masks, no ride, no mask, no enter. I mean, there's a whole picture that we're missing here, and I hope this wakes some people up.
The whole statistic of 1 in 4 teenagers have at least attempted suicide in the midst of this COVID-19. 1 in 4? Like, that's an ungodly high number.
That's so sad, man.
Now, thankfully, a lot of them have not, but many of them have. And it's going to jade the statistics of the deaths this year, which we already think COVID-19 is kind of stealing from some of the other categories. We could definitely talk about that if you want to, but I think suicides are going to be up. But see, the other things, the preventative care types of things for cancer screenings.
Yeah.
Think about all the things that are preventative once you're in that acute disease state in your chronic disease. We could see massive numbers of people die unlike ever before, all because of this COVID-19 thing, which, yes, it's real, guys. I'm not denying it, but is it as real as all the draconian measures that we put into place to try to save us from it? And now all of these deaths that are going to take place that had nothing to do with COVID-19, did we factor that in before we made these decisions?
Yeah, when it all first started, we didn't really know about this virus, right? We didn't know how much people it was going to kill. They estimated, 25 million, I think they said they predicted. And it's not even close to that. But now that we know, why are we still having these extreme measures, right? Now that we see what has transpired, why are these things still happening? So these are questions we need to ask. These are questions we need to ask ourselves, ask our community, ask our leaders. Why are we still doing this? Why can't we start school? Why can't we open up your gym or have a dinner at a restaurant?
Church.
Why can't we go to church, right? Yeah.
Still limited people. It's like, it's crazy.
I saw a video on Instagram a few weeks ago of a pastor in a packed church. They're not allowed to be open. And he said, this is a peaceful protest. And he went on with this sermon. I was like, wow.
It is ironic, the double standard that's kind of going on here. And of course, we could talk about where they blame some of the coronavirus outbreaks on some bike rally, but then nobody talks about all the BLM and Antifa people in Portland and Minneapolis and all the other places where they're wreaking havoc. Oh, no, the virus knows to stay away from them because they've got a very good cause that they're doing it for. And we know the cause of the bikers and the boaters and all. Oh, no, they don't have a good cause. And it's just so obvious. It's a double standard.
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear to us because we're seeing it. But some people who are just, they're choosing to be blind to it. At least I think that's what's happening. But it's clear to me too, Jimmy. I'm with you.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I love this country. You have parents that were immigrants to this country. It's like, this is a great, great country. Still, all the things that people say are bad about it, all the things that they say, well, we shouldn't celebrate because, and fill in the blank of what the because is. And I'm thinking, okay, you're alive today. You're in this country. You probably have more opportunity in the United States of America to become what you want to become, regardless of skin color, regardless of your sexuality, regardless of everything that you think is a limitation in your life. This is the greatest country in the world. And you're not going to find the same opportunities in some other country. That's what's always perplexing people that diss on America in America. But then I'm like, okay, where else you going to go? Where is utopia? Is it China? Is it Russia? Is it Australia? Where is utopia compared to the United States of America? And I never get a response.
Yeah, because there is no answer to that. You're right. I realize that my life could be totally different if my parents decided not to come here from Iran. I could be have a totally different life, and that I don't take for granted. That I am grateful for. I know that I'm blessed, and I prove it every day with my actions. And I love this country too. I think it's the greatest country in the world. My last name means freedom in Farsi. Azadi means freedom in Farsi. My first name, my first real name, is actually Beiruz, and that means sunrise. So my name is literally Sunrise Freedom, and I live in the free country, the greatest country in the world, and I do believe it's still the greatest country in the world. And you know what? I hold on to faith over fear. I believe we're going to come out of this stronger. I think once the election's done, we're going to hear a lot less about the virus, and we're just going to see a lot of good things manifest.
And you're in the Sunshine State, so
That's right, and it's perfect.
I grew up in Florida. I was in Pensacola, which is up in the upper northwest
Yeah,
handle. But yeah, Miami is an interesting city. So
it's beautiful. A little wacky at times, but it's beautiful.
I haven't seen many like protests and things down there. Is everything kind of cool?
When it first started, there was some protesting for a couple of weeks, but the police got it under control. And it's I actually wonder about that as well, because Florida as a whole is a conservative state. It is by far. It's like Trump Nation in Florida, but not South Florida. South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, even up to like Boca, it's not conservative. It's more Democrat. So with that being said, I was thinking that there would be more of these riots over here, because we're seeing them in these Democrat-run cities. But thank God, it's pretty much under control. They took care of it after a few weeks here.
So there is this concern if the election goes for the residing president, that there will be riots galore and unrest. I mean, are you sensing that? I know you just mentioned faith over fear, but I have a bit of a fear about that right now, that it's just going to be this unrest, and that there will just be civil unrest, and that we might be headed for a civil war, unlike the one that happened in the 1800s, a cultural one. Do you sense that at all?
Yeah, I do. I do have those thoughts. I entertain those thoughts from time to time, and it scares me. It makes me want to go be protected and have weapons just to protect myself and my family. And then I think about just more people are good in this world. I think maybe 1 or 2% of the world population are probably bad people that want to do bad things, but they make so much noise that so many people think it's larger than that. They think it's a larger percentage. So I think most people in the world, America, are good people. And I don't see that happening. And if it does, I don't see it lasting a long time. The good people will rise. Most people are good people, not just in America, in the world. And that's a fact. That is a true fact that I see with my eyes. So even if it does happen and it go that way and there's some crazy riots, I don't think it's going to last a long time. I don't think it's going to cause massive destruction. I think the good will overcome.
It's funny when you said kind of the 3%, 2 to 3%. It's just like the vegans. They're about 2 to 3% of the world's population, but they make it seem like it's such a big thing, and it's really not. Like, why is the vegan, and not to switch so quickly from the one topic to the other, but you kind of triggered that in my head. Why is it that veganism, plant-based, or what they like to be called now, plant-forward is like what they like to be called now?
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Oh, yeah. Plant forward?
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
The new one, dude. You can't call them vegan anymore. You can't call them vegetarian. Can't even call them plant-based. They're plant forward, because it's kind of like the progressive language going into the veganism. So anyway, plant forward people, they're not that many, and yet you would see all these fake plant-based meats out there. And veganism is healthy and So they've kind of got a great kind of marketing propaganda machine to make it look like they're bigger than they are.
Yeah, they've got great marketing. I mean, Beyond Burger has some fantastic marketing. They do a really great job at marketing, but we know that their product is really bad for us. And I never heard about the plant forward. I think the vegan diet is great short term. I think there's many benefits.
Fine. Because you take away all the refined foods.
Right, exactly, right? So there are some commonalities there, but I said short term, right? Maybe a month, maybe a few months. But I also know that there's not one culture in the history of this world, so our ancestors, that stuck with the same diet long term.
Right.
Not even keto, right? When our ancestors found some fruit, they didn't look back at their tribe and say, yeah, exactly. They didn't look back at their tribe and say, oh, we're keto, dude. We're not going to eat that. No, they would feast it up, get out of ketosis, and go right back in. So It's really the variation that is key. It's mixing and matching. It's changing. It's shifting. So when you stick with the same diet long term, even keto, then problems start to manifest, because we're not designed that way. So when we put ourselves in a box, like I did when I was a vegan for 1.5 years, by the way, when you put yourself in a box and identify with a diet, that's when problem starts to occur.
What are some of the problems that manifest for people that stay in long-term ketosis?
Oh, and ketosis. Yeah, I was thinking veganism for a second. Well, number one, when you have, this is from what I've seen, and I work with Dr. Pompa and a group of 50 doctors. What we've seen is when we are in ketosis too long, we're not getting any insulin spike. We have chronically low levels of insulin. So two things. Number one, I've seen the body actually slow down fat burning because we're only burning fat, only one fuel source. So I've actually seen dimply fat start to occur. And there's a study, Dr. Pompa has a study that I could share that actually showed the cells will insert water to slow down fat burning as a way to preserve the fuel, meaning we only have fat for fuel, we have no insulin spikes, so we're going to slow down this fat burning as a way to extend life because the number one priority for the body is survival. Number two issue is the thyroid, right? When we don't get insulin spikes from time to time, we don't convert, it'll be difficult to convert T4, which is the inactive form of thyroid, to T3. Insulin in the liver and other in the kidney helps make that conversion. So I could see thyroid start to dysfunction, especially in females. And then the third thing, I'll add another thing, is I've seen ladies who have a monthly cycle when they're strict ketosis for too much, for too long, and they have an irregular cycle. They might even lose their cycle or they have a heavy cycle because 5 to 7 days leading up to the period is when progesterone and estrogen drops. Insulin helps make these hormonal conversions. So what I teach my clients that are females in monthly cycles to get out of ketosis in about 5 days leading up to the period to make these hormonal conversions and then go right back into ketosis. Look, this is metabolic freedom. It's metabolic flexibility. And I believe that should be the ultimate goal, not to just be in ketosis forever.
Well, and that's the thing, like people, well, I'm keto and that's not a keto food. I think we talked about this on your show. There is no such thing as a keto food. Keto is a metabolic state. And I love the explanation you just gave, especially for the girls going into their period. That's interesting to kind of lead up. So for general health, does Dr. Pompa, that's Dan Pompa, right?
Yeah.
Dan and I,
he loves you.
Dan and I shared a stage in, what was it? Montreal? No, not Montreal. Ottawa, Canada. A couple of years ago, we were the two American speakers at this big, like, general health conference. And here we are, both keto guys. And a whole bunch of people that are skeptical of keto in the audience. So I have great fond memories of talking to Dan. But yeah, so does Dan say, like, what, get out of ketosis, what, once a week? Like keto 6 days and then like have a sweet potato and a carby meal one day and then get back on? What's he recommending?
Yeah. So first of all, Dr. Pompa he's my mentor. I get coaching from him every single week. Love that man. I think he's so brilliant. He calls it diet variation, where you change things up. I call it keto flexing. So I'm writing a new book actually called Keto Flex. Yeah, Jimmy, there you go. And it's all about this. So here is one way to do it to answer your question. First of all, I use keto as a tool to reset the metabolism, teach the metabolism and our 70 trillion cells to burn fat instead of sugar. Do that for 3 or 4 months, depending on the person, depending on their health history. Once I feel like they are ready, then we start flexing, right? So if they no longer have insulin resistance, they're no longer type 2 diabetic, they have achieved this metabolic freedom, then we do keto flexing. So one way to do it is designating 1 day per week where you have a keto flex day. This is a high healthy carb day where we do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We don't do much fasting. We have about 100 to 200 grams of carbohydrates and more protein and lower fat. And if you've done it the right way, if you build up this metabolic machinery the right way, then you should be right back into ketosis within 24 to 48 hours. And that is a healthy state. I believe that's the way the metabolism is built to work.
So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench back at you because my friend, Dr. Eric Westman, who co-wrote Keto Clarity with me, he would say that if you had that one meal, that 100 to 200 gram, day worth of 3 meals, that it will take you at least a week if you're metabolically flexible and metabolically or insulin sensitive. It'll still take you a week to get back into a full state of fat burning mode, ketosis. So you said you'll be back within 24 hours. What's the data that supports that?
I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with dozens of clients. I've seen it with the doctors that I work with. So when Dr. Westman, I love Dr. Westman, by the way, when he says a week to be in fat burning ketosis, what does he mean with the numbers? I'm talking about looking at the glucose and ketone numbers here.
Yeah. Apparently they did a study, him and this group out in Arizona did a study where they had people that were both insulin sensitive and insulin resistant. Insulin resistant, by the way, those people, it could take 30 days to get back into ketosis if they have the high carb day of food like you're describing. And so I don't know what they specifically meant. I know at the time the study was measuring breath ketones. So they were just, the breath ketones were just gone until a week later. And then they finally started registering. You know, and I think it's one of those highly variable things, bio-individual things, like we've talked about many times, that I don't think you can just across the board say, if somebody does X protocol, then it happens to everybody. And like you said, you've seen it replicated many times in many of your clients. I think if people are interested, just try it and see how it does. So what's the purpose? Does it refill your glycogen stores? It gives you that boost in the insulin, which has various benefits that people don't think about. Oh, we need to keep insulin low, but boosting your insulin strategically can actually provide some benefits. You want to talk about a little bit of that?
Yeah, I love what you said. You know, try it, right? See if it works for you, because that's the bottom line, right? Does it work for you? All the things we talk about here, does it work for you? That's the bottom line. And if it does work for you, keep doing it. If it doesn't, then don't do it. So the analogy is this: why throw in? You've done all the work to get into ketosis, to build up this machinery. Why would you intentionally get out of ketosis, right? I have a lot of members of my Keto Camp Academy saying, I don't want to do it. You know, I'm afraid to do it. The analogy is this: if it's the summertime and you're storing firewood because you know winter's going to roll around, it's going to be a cold winter month, 3 or 4 months of winter. Let's say you store about 20 logs of firewood to get ready for the cold winter month. Now, winter has rolled around and you have 4 months, but only 20 logs of wood to get through 4 months. You're going to be very slow with the burning of that firewood, right?
Right.
So let's say your buddy comes around and dumps 100 logs and says, hey, you could burn these. You're going to ramp up burning, right? That's what I've seen with fat loss. I've seen it teach the body to actually ramp up fat burning because you're actually reintroducing another fuel source, kind of reminding the body that you're not in this keto state, of course, but you're not starving in a sense. And it's just it's an adaptation. I believe it's the change that is more important than what you're changing to. So when I say change the vegan diet, change even the carnivore, and kind of rotate, mix and match, it's that adaptation. Good cells get stronger, bad cells don't adapt. So this is part of that adaptation that occurs. The second thing is the thyroid, right? You get that insulin, which will help that T4 to T3 conversion, which we know T3 is a very powerful fat burning hormone. It helps your cells produce energy. Every cell has a receptor site for T3. So I've seen introducing the Flex Day work for most people. And I've seen most of the people that I've done it with get back into ketosis within 48 hours, not testing the breath, but testing the glucose, blood glucose, and blood ketones.
So if you live in Miami, Florida, you don't need any logs because you probably don't have a fireplace, do you?
All year round. We only get one season, dude, and that is summer, right?
I'm gonna have to come see you later this year when it starts getting colder. I'll be like, okay, Ben, I'm hanging out for a couple of days if the wife doesn't mind.
I would love that. You're welcome here. We do an episode here at Keto Camp HQ. I might be actually driving up to South Carolina with my girlfriend in October or November, by the way. So if I do, I will let you know.
Nice. Yeah. That's I'm taking the last 2 months of the year off. Just I need a break. It's been a rough year for a lot of reasons, and so it's like I'm gonna breathe November, December. So cool.
If you're on break, would you still see me in person?
It depends if I'm in the area. Obviously, that's what I was saying. That I'm not sure where I'll be. I know I'm seeing my mom and my sister in Pensacola, Florida.
Oh, nice, dude.
But yeah, we'll work it out.
We'll work it out, brother.
But guys, the Ben Azadi, go check him out over on Instagram, TheBenAzadi. 28,000 followers, man. You're rocking it, man. I really love the work you're doing, and definitely you're quite the well-rounded person as well. I love kindred spirits, not just about diet, but about kind of life philosophy and the things that are going on in our world. And you're certainly one of those with me here today. But thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jimmy. I love you, and I appreciate your work so much. So grateful to be here. Thank you.